Welcome everyone, Christine here with a discussion about Orion, the most overpowered and absolutely broken legendary lord in the game at this very moment. Hopefully he will be changed to patch 3.0 because right now the level of power that he has at his disposal is absolutely absurd. It is silly beyond any measure of imagination, and currently he is by far and away the strongest legendary lord in the game. But what makes him powerful? Is it his combat ability? Is it his skill line? Is it his lord effects? No, it's none of that. It's two effects that he gets faction-wide. He gets a minus 8% upkeep for his own army for each active war, and 4% for all other armies for each active war. And this stacks, and basically what it means is that for 11 wars, Orion is paying no upkeep on his army. Then, for 25 wars or so, if you're just if you only had one army and you didn't have to count supply lines, your other armies wouldn't be paying upkeep. Now, you will need more wars because supply lines will increase your upkeep. Right now, I have 4 armies, so my army upkeep is increased by 12%. That means I need closer to 30 wars in order to get, in order to not have to pay upkeep. But I am not paying upkeep for any of these armies, and it gets a bit ridiculous, the amount of money I have. Granted, some of it is for the quest battle, but others are just purely because I talked with a lot of the factions around me and around the world, and I got them to pay me for me declaring war on the factions they're fighting. So, for instance, with the Fey Enchantress, she starts a war with the Minor Greenskin faction. The first thing I did when I started this campaign is have her pay me to declare war on them. They got wiped out, sure. Then there's Bordello. I asked them, Aquitaine, I asked them to pay me to declare war on Grom. And actually, it was kind of funny because I asked Carrick-Ziffin to pay me to declare war on Bastan, and then I declared war on them. It gets a bit silly. But that's just nearby factions, and certainly isn't a recommended idea to just declare war on every single one of your neighbors, because doing so is gonna have negative consequences. Unless you're the kind of person who feels like dealing with Ekikla and Belegar at the same time, it's probably not the wisest idea. Besides, by the way, the reason it's not wise to declare war on all of your neighbors is because that will affect the growth of the Oak of Ages, or the forest health of Alpha Lorem, and you obviously want to grow it because that gives you a growth benefit. The more you have, the more benefits you get, and of course you want to get the Oak of Ages sorted out. So I would avoid declaring war on Belikard, Carrick Norn, or certainly the Fey Enchantress. Take out Paravan as quickly as possible. Maybe help Durfo, as I did over here, take out dwarves and take that territory for yourself, even if you do end up selling it to Durfu. So for instance, over here, one of the things I can do is get the Gristle Valley and give it to Durfu for certain. Of course, the Wood Elves pay a ridiculous sum when it comes to taking over settlements, so that is a bit of an annoyance, absolutely, but all the same. So over here, if I give that to Durfu, it won't be quite enough to get the agreements, the diplomatic agreements that I need. By the way, you can gain a lot of money and reduce the upkeep by just getting your neighbors, your orderly neighbors, to pay you for you declaring war on factions they hate. So for instance, with Belegar, you get 2 factions right off the bat because of course he starts a war with the Broken Nose and the Mutinous Gits. But it goes further. There is a particular research over here that you have available from very early on. You just need to research the Crone, and then you can get the Wisdom of the Eagle Lords. Now, this will give you sight over all magical forest regions around the world. That means that you get to see all of the other Wood Elven factions around the world. And because of that, you can then declare war on the factions around those trees with no consequences whatsoever. For instance, over here, I could have declared war on Katep. Maybe I should have. Instead, I declared war on these minor greenskins and had Katep pay me. I declared war on these Dark Elves, had the Sisters pay me. I declared war on the Scourge of Cain and had Lariel pay me, and on and on and on. And the more factions you gain vision with, the better it gets. There's a lot of factions that will never pose a threat to you or your territories, especially because you only really care about the trees. I mean, yes, the Heathlands are important. They're important not just because of direct control, but they're also important because of growth. And growth is important for the Wood Elves in their campaign, because they need it for economic buildings. They need it for certain special buildings over here, especially if you're gonna get casters. So it is important. But really, it's the trees that matter the most when it comes down to it. I mean, you could always raise these settlements and get a bit of a benefit when it comes to pacification. It won't be enough. Your starting position actually kind of sucks, dealing with like starting over here, not being able to recruit units on your first turn, having to build this structure to just get regular Glade Guard. But still, you can earn a lot of money very quickly and be constantly constructing buildings over here. So I'm getting the tier 3 settlement, gonna take 10 turns. You don't need growth for the main settlement building, you just need growth for those economic buildings, and as well as certain special buildings over here in military support and, of course, defense. So this campaign is ridiculous. The reason it's ridiculous is because the Wood Elves actually have an economy that's based around them actually paying upkeep. And when you no longer have to pay upkeep, well, you can start doing crazy crap like this, where, for instance, I have an army of 8 units, another 8 units being recruited, 2 more over here, and a full stack. This, for virtually every other faction, if I tried to do this, this would bankrupt me very quickly, in point of fact, during the course of my campaign. So it isn't something you'd be able to pull off. Hell, just maintaining this number of armies so quickly is absurd. But it gets even more absurd, because at the moment I don't have the capacity to recruit Treekin. But once I get the capacity of recruiting Treekin, I'm just going to start recruiting Treekin, and I'm not going to stop. Because their upkeep can be pretty significant, but I'm not paying upkeep. And even if you're paying a bit of upkeep because of supply lines, like for instance, if I had 1 less war, I'd be paying 6 upkeep for these Glade Guard. That is not important at all. So you'll be very rich because all of your income is something you're going to gain. You're not going to lose anything in terms of your income due to maintaining units, and you can maintain more armies than any other faction in the game, more quicker than any other faction in the game, and fill those armies not with chaff, not with crap stacks, but with actually some of the best units for a race that has some really powerful ranged and melee units. So fill them up with Treekin, fill them up with Glade Guard, eventually, of course, get some of the more powerful units available. That's what makes Orion ridiculous. He has the ability to recruit the largest number of armies in the game at the moment, with some of the highest quality of armies in the game. Of course, he's still going to be limited in terms of hero capacity because of structures, but still, unleash the Wood Elven end times. Just throw 100 different armies across the campaign map and conquer the world. Literally, you can do so. You don't need to do so, but you can do so. That is why Orion is pretty broken and overpowered at the moment, to an extent no other legendary lord can match. I mean, think of the other powerful races, the Greenskins, the Warriors of Chaos, the Vampire Counts. They have the ability of recruiting some really powerful armies, or the ability of recruiting some very cheap armies, some cost-effective armies, and recruiting them in large numbers, with the exception of Warriors of Chaos, of course. But they can't do both. Not unless they start building a massive economy. That's where Orion comes in. no one can stand up to him, because when you throw half a dozen stacks filled with Treekin eventually, like after the first, let's say, 20 turns, that's what you're going to be doing in this campaign. You're just going to be throwing Treekin at the problem in Doomstack after Doomstack after Doomstack. The AI is not going to be able to compete with that. Hell, I don't think any player could compete with that. I think maybe if someone was playing Grom the Punch in multiplayer, maybe they could annihilate Orion if they rushed him very, very quickly before Orion unlocked all his good unit recruitment. But even then, it's not like invading Alpha Lorem is necessarily an easy affair, even for Grom. It's doable against AI, against another player, different situation. Anyway, that's all there is to say. Costin here signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.